One of the benefits of doing this is we get to explore kind of the full arc of founding all the way through to building an organization, looking at its viability. And today we're going to get to explore some of the kind of corner turn on that arc with a founder who has transitioned out of his CEO role, handed off the keys to the company, still has a board seat on the company, but is not involved in the day-to-day, and is exploring what that next season needs to look like. Is in a period of Sabbath or sabbatical, taking a little bit of a rest or a break. One of the things we're going to explore, though, is that there's activity that's kind of happening even in the midst of that. So I'm going to seed that with a poem by Wendell Berry from 1979, his Sabbath poems. And then I'm going to introduce Luke to y'all. Whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. Vision held open in the dark by our 10,000 days of work. Harvest will fill the barn. For that, the hand must ache, the face must sweat. And yet no leaf or grain is filled by work of ours. The field is tilled and left to grace, that we may reap. Great work is done while we're asleep. Luke, join us. So Luke, we met almost 10 years ago, I think. It's hard to believe it's 2026.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year that was when you were just starting Narrative Collab or had the idea for what Rigged Supply would become?
So it would have been 2016 or 17, probably.
So we're talking a decade arc here.
Yes.
Yes.
Full decade.
Give us the origin story for what Rigged Supply would become, and in that, kind of describe the nascent idea that we interacted with, I think, early on around Narrative Collab, and then what became Rigged. Just kind of give us that early stage founding story.
Yeah, so the journey to fieldwork came out of, I had been working at an off-road company, manufactures stuff for trucks, straight out of college. I have a philosophy degree, found myself kind of helping build this like off-road company through a series of events. And it had been a couple years of really getting to just boots on the ground, like help build a small business. And I had gone away with our church to a trip to Uganda and then Israel and Palestine. And on that trip, I just kind of had this powerful moment where I was in Israel and Palestine, going back and forth, hearing these stories of vastly different perspectives on issues as old as time. And there was this moment where it just kind of hit me that each of these stories had the power to completely transform your position on an issue. And so that was just this sort of like deep thought that stuck with me. And then coming back home, series of events, I was feeling this stirring that like I was going to start a company, but I didn't really know what it was yet. But I had all of this like deep-seated why of connecting people and products and purpose together was like the root thing that I believed it was my mission to do. And so, I've joked and like I definitely told this to Jeff. It's like every business when it's starting, if you guys have ever seen the movie Step Brothers, Prestige Worldwide, every business starts as Prestige Worldwide, where you're like, it's a beat laboratory and this and that, and it like doesn't even make sense, but it's like you're just grasping for this thing, but you don't really know what it is yet. But your heart is like, man, there's something in there. And like, it's been so cool, like the work that Fieldwork has done and now Hildegard is doing is like helping people make sense of that longing, that calling that's inside you, and like begin to put that in boxes and articulate. So what is that? And where is it going? And so my time working in the cohort that Jeff was just mentioning, which was like, what, cohort number 2, I think, that had gone through?
Yeah, earliest iterations of what now is the Hildegard Entrepreneur Lab back in 2016. Cohort number 2, batch number 2, we called them batches.
So yeah, in the second batch, and you know, like, again, like, even on pitch night, by that point, it was still this sort of like, it was related to the industry I had been in and like the truck and van kind of automotive aftermarket space, but it was not at all what it ended up becoming. What it ended up becoming is I ended up having a very specific product solution that patents were filed around, that got traction, grew over time from 2018 till now, from one product to a series of products backed with some, you know, solid intellectual property of being unique designs, building a brand, in the last year building the manufacturing out internally in Orange. So a full turnkey business, a product with some, you know, novel designs being manufactured with a team, and all that takes place to start and build a small business like that has been the last 9 years. And then I think what I started to feel in the last year especially was that it started to become clear that we had like built a team. Like, people always talk about like leading from a place of trying to work yourself out of a job. But what happens when you actually do that? Because everyone talks like, yeah, I want to work myself out of a job.
It sounds great.
It sounds great till you're like, so you gonna leave? And ultimately, like, there came this point with conversations and friends and mentors. My friend Dave, who owns a surf company called Almond, he said it really well. He's like, Luke, you got to remember, like, the same things that made you great from 0 till now are the same things that are going to get in the way from now to the next. And I think that, you know, another friend of mine who started a really cool product that I'm also working kind of on the side with him now on his new product launch. He's built a lot of products, and like, he has this awkward line he says at cocktail parties, like, I'm a maker of things, and people are like, what? Like, weirdo. But like, he is like, he's made a lot of things over the years, and he's like, Luke, like, whether it's making a new product or building a motorcycle or building a car, he's like, sometimes you finish building it and you look back and you're like, yeah, I liked building that, but I never wanted to drive that one. And I think that's some of the experience that I've had towards Rig was like, and it's ironic because it is like a car-based product line, but it's like, we built the car and then I was like, yeah, I don't want to drive this. And also like suffering like pretty extreme burnout. I think it's fair to say, like, if you talk to like businesses, I think in any sector, but I can speak really specifically to outdoor related products, the rise, fall, and recovery of the last 10 years from COVID, post-COVID, has been this roller coaster of emotion that, like, trying to describe what it's like to build an outdoor brand where you're in infancy and then COVID and then after COVID, like, the way I've described it is it's like giving kids cocaine and then have them become like sustainable, thriving, mature people. You know, like, COVID was insane. Like, you start a company and then it just blows up, and you could have sold, you know, rocks and made $1 billion. Like, and then you come out of that and back to like, what is normal and what is sustainable and how do we do this? And like navigating all the ebbs and flows and hiring team to support COVID and then firing said team because this is not the same as it was in COVID, and like all of what you've had to walk through. But I think like in all of that journey, you know, it's like so much life happens in between the mission and vision. And flash forward to a few months ago, like, had coffee with Jeff. We hadn't talked really in like pretty much 10 years. And it was like this moment for both of us of like coming back together and being like, man, that was a lot of life. What were we going for? Like, what were we trying to build? Like, revisiting it and like going back to, ironically, like, what was your prestige worldwide like thing that was in your heart that you were like, I really wanted to do this thing? And, you know, for me, it was like, it's stories. Narrative Collab has just been the legal back-end name of Rigged. It's meant nothing to anyone except me for the last 10 years. But I just want to be someone who can connect meaningful stories, the people, the products, the purpose behind things, connect them to a better way of doing things.
So you're in a real-time, very liminal, transitionary space. You are in a vulnerable space with Luke right now. I mean, just kind of calling that out, right? When you agreed to do this, we talked about it, and I said, hey, I think it would be really helpful to have you just kind of lay out where you're at, what you're in the middle of processing. Some of that is what it looks like. You mentioned earlier, you're helping out Dave at Almond, you're helping out build this other product, Karga. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of sabbatical, because we talked a few months ago and it was like, oh, I have to take a sabbatical. I took my own before founding fieldwork, and it was what I thought was going to be 6 weeks turned into 6 months because I didn't realize how burnt out I actually was from my previous career of 9 years in the banking industry, and was at this place where I was like, I know I needed to quit and take a break, but I didn't realize how much I actually needed that until I was in the space. And when I was in that space, what I realized is there's like regeneration that's starting to happen beneath the soil, kind of like go to Barry, agriculture reference. I know you love Salatin, Barry, maybe we can throw in a couple more quotes here. But just like talk a little bit about what that process has felt like for you as you're in this, I know I need to stop toiling. I know that Rigged isn't the car that I want to drive. There's this idea of narrative collab that was the original mission that I was after. And I'm in this process right now of trying to figure out what the regenerated soil is going to bring. Where are you in that? What does it feel like? Bring us into that moment.
Yeah, so it became really clear in the last year that I needed to step away. When people that you've known even before starting the company that you built, that are like really good friends of you, that have been with you and worked for you, are like, man, I don't really like being around Luke. He's like kind of toxic. That's a red flag. Like, oh, like, yeah, I gotta step out. And then like that process of stepping out, I mean, it is a very vulnerable space to like, one, trust other people to kind of take the reins of the thing that you still own. And also, this is a small business. Like, this isn't some story of like, oh yeah, I've just like made all this money and it's like fine and like I can just like do whatever I want. It's like, no. Like, stepping away from a small business, being edifying to the team that's grinding, working on this company that is very much in process, like literally meant stuff as raw as like, no, like I'm gonna trust for the next season. I'm gonna lay myself off from my own company. because like that's what health looked like. And then in that, there was this point where like it kind of led up to this moment where it was like, yeah, like it's time to give a speech to the rig team of 20 people and say, guys, like the way that this company was built was each story, each person that came shaped what this thing has become. And for what it's going to become next is going to require me to step out to quote Kierkegaard, by virtue of the absurd, basically, bring new stories back to this thing, some way, somehow. And so on May 7th, I gave a speech to the rig team and said, I'm stepping out. May 8th, I was riding my bike from my house to Almond Surfboards, this little tiny surf shop in Eastside Costa Mesa, to literally just help my friend Dave run this little surf shop, as he's also been in his sort of transition and in some ways sabbatical changes that he's gone through. And there's a lot I could speak to that of what it's meant in community to be able to support each other as a community. Like Almond has been at it for 17 years of just grinding, talking about surfboards till you're blue in the face, right? And it's like, I've been 10 years grinding, writing email blasts about truck stuff, right? And it's like, sometimes just that sort of human crop rotation of cultivating fresh ideas and perspectives by allowing in vulnerability, like for me to step out of rigged, but also for another founder to let me in to speak to what might be new creative ways to think about this. Like we need this, and it's like, to use the agrarian analogies, like there's two ways we can build businesses. We can do it the industrialized way, where we plant one thing till kingdom come, till all the topsoil's eroded, and then in the 11th hour say like, okay, so now create more crops and like new diversity, and it's like you're never going to get it. Like the only way to do it is to have the diversity coming all along the way, and some of that means allowing the ground to rest. And so both on a human level and for the business, it's like allowing ground to rest and then step into other things, just like a good sustainable organic farm. It's like there's just sheep that, what do the sheep do? Just let the sheep do their thing and let these things do their things, and like allow for this sort of better model. And it's like, as businesses, that's what we're trying to do. Because for me, for Rigged, for Almond, for the companies that I tend to be in and around, we're not in this to exploit. We're not in this to just build something up, sell it to whoever's the highest bidder, and move on. Sayonara, good luck, employees. Not that there's anything wrong with selling your company at some point, as you probably should, but it's when you're building things for long-term legacy and stewardship, how you maintain that brings into question like what you might have to do in different seasons for that long of a road.
There are a lot of places I want to go to explore. There's the farms versus factories analogy that I think is fun. Just thinking about like factories are built to extract as much as possible, and then in that the typical model for the dream that we kind of are complicit in, I think, or I'm complicit in. I don't know your perspective, but is this like private equity model? Oh, I can build this company to this place, and all of my motivation is to exit with X amount of money. And the question then comes, like for what? And I think that's what you're addressing in the, it's the idea of what meaning are you making in the world if the sole motivation of building this company is to exit to get a certain amount of money. If that's the only motivation, you're going to build your company a whole lot differently than if you're thinking about employment, people, culture development, making meaning through the product itself, building a story, and a bigger narrative around the product, that you're connecting families into, off-roading adventures together because your products are helping them to do that. Like, there's something that's bigger that you're motivated to enter into if you're thinking about legacy and stewardship and handing off the company to somebody else who can run the small business versus handing it off to somebody who can extract as much from it.
Yeah, and I think one other story I could speak to on that, in just a real life example, is that I had this experience in the last year where my dad was telling me this story where he had been involved in like brand identity for companies, and there was a company in the automotive space that he had done the original brand identity and helped them build into their first acquisition. And now they're like 2 acquisitions away from their original, owned by this big private equity firm. And a lot of the original design and engineering team is like still there. And he had this experience of catching up with them. And they're describing what it's like to work in that company 2 acquisitions away from the original company. And it's these guys coming in like that are these, like finance nerds, and basically saying like, walking into these like this team of really talented engineers and designers being like, okay, so this quarter we're gonna need an innovative new product. And it's like these guys like literally know nothing about the industry, the customer base, the markets. Like, they're so out of touch. And like, to me, like that's the model that everyone is used to seeing happen for companies. But you see how that is the analogy of what happens when you're in industrialized mode. Like, that interaction of like trying to get people to keep innovating and creating and make beauty, make good things. And it's like, the topsoil's gone here, folks. Like, it's not there. What needed to happen all along the way is finding ways to cultivate the creativity and bring new insight back to it. And so, like, I guess, yeah, I'm living this like philosophical experiment of like what happens when you know that that's what happens if you don't ever allow for the cultivation of new creativity. And if it means lay yourself off and go work at your buddy's surf shop, and that's what sabbatical looks like, then do it. It's worth it.
And talk to us about that. And then I'm going to open it up for questions here in just a minute. So be thinking, if you have something, raise your hand, I'll come around. Just talk to us about what that soil regeneration looks like for you right now, and why that, because you could say, I'm going to work at my buddy's surf shop, and that feels like, you use the word work, so it doesn't feel like sabbatical on the surface. Right. But it does feel like sabbatical to you.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I think for one, I read this book kind of while I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do. It's called Let Your Life Speak. And as I read that book, I realized that for me, it's funny, like just before this talk, we were talking about it back over there with Brian about like, what is the word that sort of defines like when you're operating in health, like this is you. Like for Brian, it's like, if I'm being a poet before all these other things, then things tend to be going well. It's like, for me, that word is guide. Like whether I was coaching mountain biking or working at a shop, like a bike shop or whatever, like when I'm guiding people into like a journey that I'm really excited to just give them everything they need to be successful, like I'm stoked. And so like some of it for me was like knowing how recharging that is for me. Like people walking in the door and being like, I want to learn how to surf, and being like, rad, let's set you up for success. Here's what I think you should get, and here's where you should go, and this is what you should do. Like that is life-giving work for me. I love it. And that's the kind of work I will gladly do till the day I die. And sometimes it's literally just setting someone up for success to go surf, or it's like, I have this product idea, and it's like, oh, rad, okay. you need to meet my patent attorney, you need to meet this person, you need to meet that person, let's do this. And it's like, but in all of those instances, it's like, it's being a guide. So
that's great. I'm going to give a shameless plug for Hildegard College's core purpose assessment, which is on the Hildegard College website. What you were just describing, that single word of guide, would be what if you take this assessment, we can help you navigate through to what your core purpose is, the intersection of what's your zone of genius, what moves your spirit, what does the world need, and what value can you bring to the world. So go to the website if you're interested in that. I'd love to hear feedback on that. Does anybody have a question for Luke as we transition into kind of the end of our time here? Something that came up that you're interested in exploring a little bit more? I'll bring the mic.
Thanks, Luke. This is a vague question, but as you were telling your story, I was remembering what you said in the beginning about your visit to the Middle East and how hearing somebody tell their story has the power to just radically change your perspective on an issue. That seemed to have an enormous effect on you and the way you think. And I'm just curious if that's come full circle for you and if that's something that you're thinking about now in this sort of liminal transitional state. Are you thinking about that in terms of your own story? Are you thinking about that in terms of telling stories? Or is there sort of a story of work, the common good, or purpose that has challenged the way you think? And it's a big question, but I'm just curious if why did you start with that example, and what comes to mind now in your current situation when you think about interacting with those folks in the Middle East?
yeah, so I mean, really, I feel like what that gets at is the work of being a peacemaker and a bridge builder. And another kind of life mantra is that business is easy, people are hard. And so whether you're dealing in a conflict over territories in the Middle East, or what direction your brand should go on a certain campaign, it's learning to process and work through people whose perspective on an issue couldn't be more different than your own. Turns out it's a useful skill everywhere. And so I think that, like, to sort of answer your question, I feel like the peacemaking and bridge building work applies everywhere, and it's often your literal neighbor more than it's even like this, let's peacemake out there. It's like, nah, dude, you got to do it to like the guy who shares a cubicle next to you first. But it's everywhere. One other thing I did want to just mention, because you mentioned Zone of Genius.
Yeah.
Something else that I feel like this journey has unlocked for me is like that book, The Big Leap, the notion of Zone of Genius. I feel like that's a really good exercise. If you haven't read the book, it's basically walking you through from zone of incompetence to competence to ultimately zone of genius. Like, what is it that you can so uniquely contribute to the world? But I felt like there's a follow-up book needed post Zone of Genius, which is Zone of Wholeness. A lot of what I've been trying to get back to is like, what does wholeness look like? Because Zone of Genius ultimately can still it's still an extractive model. It's still just you doing the thing that you do really good, but just extract it out of you as much as you can, which is like ultimately going to lead to burnout. So I'm going for Zone of Wholeness. I think that's what Barry would want.
That's what Barry would want, definitely.
So, yeah.
That's a great way to wrap up. We're out of time. I love the way that we're kind of closing that. I look forward to that book that you're going to write after your sabbatical. Don't feel any pressure on that. Let's thank Luke for being here today.